on the pitch, but amongst the crowd, everybody stood up, everybody applauded, everybody felt the excitement of what this young man can bring to Arsenal, not just in the future, but actually in the present day and right now. An incredible talent. He lit up the Emirates that day. He just changed the narrative. It was a pre-season friendly, but it was a competitive friendly. Arsenal weren't doing too well in it. He just changed the narrative, the impetus. And when you speak to Arsenal players about what Max Dowman's like, they played with him in training when he was 14 years old. They've been talking about him for a while now. They know his ability. They trust him to give him the ball, to let him do his thing, to trust someone that young who just recently turned 16 on New Year's Eve. Says a lot about the player. Mikel Arteta himself made comments after the game against Newcastle and Villarreal, and he was kind of put this question, how difficult is it to manage a talented 15-year-old like Max Dowman with the responsibility that you have? And he said, well, I haven't got a choice. He's a first-team player. He's that good, and we just have to see him play. Yeah, it's just ridiculous being able to perform at that level, at that age, against grown men, isn't it? He's injured at the moment, Max Dowman. Can't wait to see him in action again soon. Now, another story regarding Arsenal. According to a couple of the papers, Arsenal are exploring a possible summer move for the Atletico Madrid striker Julian Alvarez for a potential fee of around £87 million. Now, it's just a couple of rumours in a couple of papers, but this would be massive if it happened, Andy. Do you honestly think it could happen?
I have a feeling Atletico might cash out. They're at least going to consider it, I think, because there's been a little bit of an uneasy relationship between Alvarez entourage and the club for a while. There are people around him who think that he shouldn't have signed for Atletico because maybe they're not quite an elite club. They're maybe an A- club with pretensions to being an elite club, despite the stadiums, despite the Champions League finals, despite a couple of La Liga titles interspersed with what Real Madrid and Barcelona are doing. But of course, they're not quite on the same level as Real Madrid and Barcelona. I tell you what, he's played so much football recently, which kind of, in the last couple of years recently, that's what prompted City to sell him in the first place. And now, I think they're looking at him. They were looking at building that team around him once Griezmann's gone. Now, Griezmann's still there, but will probably go in the summer. But they're looking at it and they're thinking, you know what, we're not getting that consistency out of him. And maybe that's just a knock-on, like Lautaro Martinez, from playing so much football. But maybe they're thinking, just like City thought, maybe we make it someone else's problem. Because if his entourage aren't completely bought in, and they're not getting a tune out of him on a consistent basis, they have to at least think about it.
All right, interesting. One to watch. Quite possibly, if it happens, Arsenal may well have to sell a big player to make sure they've got the funds. We've got plenty coming up on Good Morning Transfers. Lucas Paquetá returns to Brazil. We've got some great pictures coming up of him being welcomed by the fans. But will West Ham find a replacement? Plus, photos. A bit warmer, I think, there than in East London right now. Lovely blue sky, and he's loving being back home, and the fans are as well. We had Tim Vickery on this show yesterday, Andy, on Transfer Talk, and he said it was a big coup for Brazilian football, and it certainly is. But equally, is it a bit of a blow for European football? We're used to seeing Brazilian stars coming this way and not going back the other way. He's still at his peak, Paquetá.
Yeah, he is, but I think the devil's in the detail there because, firstly, the fact is his form's not been amazing for a number of reasons, which we're all very aware of. This was a guy who we thought would be replacing Bernardo Silva at Manchester City, and it didn't happen for those reasons. And this is someone we expected, and West Ham, when they bought him, expected to be an elite player, and he's not been. Now, in the context of West Ham, he's still been and could have potentially been useful going on. I said last time I was on here that I thought they would be best to sell him, just in terms of atmosphere, just in terms of making sure everyone's committed. And that is clearly the way that Nuno and the club have gone with transfers. James Ward-Prowse going, of course, this week. But in terms of it being a blow to European football and the power of Brazilian football, look, maybe in a couple of years' time, if Brazil is coming over and taking peak players from the Premier League, which I still think is a way off, then maybe we could talk about that as a trend. But for now, it's a player whose value has dropped, who needs to be in good nick before the World Cup. And it is still a step forward, we have to say, for Brazilian football. And the money they have compared to other South American countries, their clubs, like a Flamengo, to go and buy a player like that on Premier League wages, it does show that something's changed.
But he is a player that's been in Europe for a while now. You know, he's gone from AC Milan, Lyon, spent a lot of time at West Ham, 28 years old, World Cup year, returning home. It's something that seems to work. But for West Ham, they will be looking at their options now and what they've got. But they've already brought in Adama Traore. They've already brought in Tati Castellanos and Pablo, who've been, both of those two have been thrusted into the first team already. Crescencio Somerville, we're seeing a bit of a breakthrough moment, it feels like. His quality seems to be shining through a little bit now. They've got the creativity of Mateus Fernandes in the middle of the park as well. So, and let's not forget Jared Bowen too. So actually they've now built in this window other alternative options, not forgetting Callum Wilson, who now seems likely to stay at the club, certainly until the end of the season. So the options